Hi, this is Tom, and I run a basic modeling club at a nearby Air Force base. And it surprised me how many people are interested in building models, but they don't really know where to start, or they see these big, beautiful models, and that's rather intimidating. So I'm going to start with the real basics here, just like I do with my youngsters in the modeling club. The first thing you want to do is you want to start with a model. Pick something out. In this case, I'm going to go with what's called a P40F. It's a bag kit. They just come in these bags. There's nothing wrong with that at all. They should come with a set of decals. Now, they're usually decals. They're not stickers. You got to soak them in water to put them on, and we'll cover that in a little while. This extra bag inside the bag, this is your canopy and your windscreen. You want to leave them in that little bag because if one of these gets off the tree and jumps down on the ground, the carpet monster is going to eat that. You'll never see it again. This is your basic kit. You want to take it out of the bag or box and make sure that anything that looks like it has a part on it has a part on it. Now there's some little spots here, but if you notice that's flat, so there's not supposed to be anything there. Make sure that we're not missing anything here. Oh, yep, see right here, we're missing something right there. As a matter of fact, we're going to have to find, I bet that is a propeller that might have opened, and we're missing down here, we're missing another piece. Right there, we're missing that chair. Now, I bet my propeller is right over here on the table where I set the bag a moment ago because it was there. So now we know everything's here. The next thing we want to do before we start is we want to look at our instructions. Better idea is let's put everything back in the little bag so it doesn't get sacrificed to the carpet monster. Now then, we have a set of instructions. These are also sometimes called blueprints. And as you go along, you just want to check, make sure that there are no big surprises, that as you go along, and yes, these are well used, so that you have some idea when things are going to go together, like, the landing gear are one of your last things that you do. You got your drop tank over here. You have some familiarity with what the steps are going to be. Okay. And this is another good part to stop and look, because you have different camouflage patterns. You can't see them very well here. Maybe if we come up here a little bit, you can see where some of them are a little different. So now is a good time to decide which way you want to paint it before you even get started, so you can have that in mind. So let's go back here to the front, and now we're going to check and see on our basic tools for building this model. Okay, our basic tools, we're going to need some basic paints. We're going to need an olive drab, green, all these colors here. We're not going to need all of those though. Depends on which way you're going to paint it. For starters, we're going to need black. I use acrylics because acrylics can be cleaned with water. And it doesn't have to be a special made for plastic paint. Them are handy, them are really good, but even just basic acrylic paint in the hobby department is fine. I'm keeping that upside down because it's almost empty. And then we're going to need some what's called interior green. It's also often called zinc chromate. If you can't find this in the store, just mix some medium green with some yellow. You'll get the same thing. And this is also calls for, if you read down through here, it says aluminum. Okay, well this particular one is titanium. Basically, all we're looking for here is a silver color. We're going to use such small amounts, you're not going to be able to tell the difference on your first model. You'll be just fine. Now, some of our other... Okay, as our supervisor hops up here and takes a quick look around. Say hi, Sammy. Another one of our tools that we're going to need, believe it or not, toothpicks. Toothpicks are very important as we go along. You'll see that. We're going to need model glue. This is the kind that's been around for decades. This is what I used when I was a kid building a model. It's a gel type. The gel types are good because they're very forgiving and dry very slowly. And there's also a liquid type. There, Sammy's given his approval. There's a liquid type, and the liquid types are used by advanced people in modeling And for good reason. They dry quickly. They're easier to use. They're much less messy. This can be a little messy. But for your first model, this is your best. You're going to get some glue prints on your model, but this is really good for that. On that first model because it's forgiving. If you put something in the wrong place, you can still pull it back off. Okay, we're going to need a knife of some kind. We don't want the supervisor to get a hold of this. One of these little dollar store knives are just fine. That'll do you for your first model. You want to stay away from heavier knives, switchblades, lock blades, pocket knives, things like that. If you don't have anything else, a paring knife from the kitchen will work just fine too. We want to keep things inexpensive on this first model. So something else that we're going to use are files. We need some sanding paper. Well, these are just fingernail files. So them are also from the dollar store, very inexpensive. And we're going to need a paintbrush. All right, a little 1/4-inch paintbrush, about a 6mm, is all that you'll need to get this project started. Now, one of our last things that we're going to need, like I said, our paints here, clean with water. You can use something like a sour cream container. I would just cut it down. Or a plastic cup, a bowl, anything that you've got. And all we need is just some plain old tap water. About that much will be plenty. Stop. All right, now that Sammy's moved back over and give us a little room to work, we'll get started on our model. As long as he stays over there. Oopsie. All right, Sammy, we're not playing. So our first model here, our first pieces that we're going to look at are going to be our dash panel and our side panels. Now, since we know we're going to be doing, this is part of our cockpit, this is part of our cockpit or flight deck, we're going to be looking at all these pieces. We'll just go ahead and jump ahead and look at all these. Okay, where do we need to do which color? So since we're going to be painting on this one, I want to paint all my pieces the same, that are the same color all at once, and then switch to our next color. That's the most efficient way to do it. So we're looking here and we're seeing the zinc chromate or interior green here, here, here. Now it says interior green on this, but black works better on these dash panels because that's some real fine work and we're not ready for that yet. And we come down here, we see another interior green, more interior green, more interior green. So we're going to paint all these pieces that are interior green first. All right, so we're going to take our interior green. We're going to give that a stir. Use the back side of your paintbrush. If you use your bristles, then them bristles soak up a whole lot of paint. And you just waste a lot of paint. This way you can scrape it off on the side of your jar. There's some people that won't do that because they think it makes chunks. And it can if you're doing a lot of airbrush work. But then again, it's not, I've never had a problem with it, so I don't generally do it. Okay, our supervisor's going to leave now, it looks like. Let's go here to these first two pieces. Okay, we're going to dip this paintbrush in right here. See, I didn't even soak it all the way up. We don't need that much paint on the brush. Then we're going to start right up here. Now, when you're painting something, especially, can you see the detail on that piece? Okay, when you're painting something like that, you're going to use variable directions. You don't want to go just all in one. You won't get it. So paint this way, paint that way. Now, I know from years of experience that I don't want to go down on that bottom edge because that's where the paint pieces are going to come together. So switch over here to this one. There we go. We'll come down here. Now, here, if you follow that, see this piece here is going to go into there, so we don't want to paint into that slot. So we're just going to paint along here. And there's probably something going to go into that slot. When you see slots like that, you can figure there's something going to go in there. Okay, just another little dab of paint. Just barely a dab. Just paint that up like that. Oh, that's kind of thick, actually. Okay, now as we're seeing, there's going to be this piece right back here. This is called the headboard. We don't need to paint that whole thing because that seat's going to go right onto there, and that's where you're going to glue. And we'll talk about glue spots here in a minute. So we just need to paint this right here. As you can see in the picture that it has this little round spot. And here we have one that's flat. That's for a different version of this airplane. So we're just going to paint these right here. We don't even, just don't get carried away with it. There we go. That's plenty of paint. Plenty of paint. On that piece, and let's check this other piece over here to get some of that paint off that so it'll dry a little faster. There we go. Okay, now, like I said, we need a little water. Watch this. Take your paintbrush, that's acrylic paint. This is just tap water again. Just put it in there, flush it around a little bit, wipe it off, good enough. Okay, now we also, while we're at it, we're going to need a thing called a palette. This is one of the bigger palettes that I have, but it'll do. And these are handy for putting paints on that don't come in little bottles. And it's also handy for glue. And we'll check on that in a minute. So you just take this. I got this upside down, like I said, because it's almost empty. There, we just need one little dot like that. Now some of these that are like this need just a little bit of, put just a little bit of water on your brush. Nothing fancy. There we go. Mix that in a little bit. Okay. And get the correct side of your dash panel or instrument panel. And there we go. Now what is one thing that all aircraft have? Aircraft all have, you guessed it, tires. Well, since we got our black paint out, let's go ahead and paint our tires while we're at it, because we know they're going to get painted sooner or later. And we don't have to be real careful right off the bat. This is just, we're going to paint them just real quick, get some paint on there, and we'll come back and we'll trim them all up with the other colors later. So we'll just over paint it just a little bit. Okay, and we're going to come down here and paint these tires too. These are your main tires. There's left and right. But as you notice, there's 4 of them because they're going to glue together when we get to that point. And you know what? It's okay to miss some spots, because we'll trim them up later if we want, and if not, we won't. There's one thing you need to remember when you're building a model. It's your model. You make it look how you want it to look. And all this inside here, we'll fix that when we do our trim work. Which we won't do a lot of trim work either, because I want this to stay nice and simple. Okay, now, what we're looking at here is I'm looking to see that these are dry. This is matte paint. You can tell matte paint it's dry because it won't reflect. Now these spots where you can see where it's reflecting light, nice and shiny, those are still wet spots. Now we want them to dry because we're going to do a little magic next. We're going to do a thing called dry brushing. I'm going to take and wipe all the paint off this brush that I possibly can. There we go. Get it nice and dry. Now we're going to load that paintbrush. We want to get this little thicker stuff in here. We don't want it real dry. We want it real dry. There we go, real dry. Now, look at that. See how I'm painting on this paper towel, and see how after a little while you're painting over the details. Can you see that good? Okay, that's just about where you want it. If you drag it across and you get too much paint everywhere, well, then you know you've got too much paint. So we're going to give that just another moment to dry. We'll come down here and look at these. Okay, these guys are about ready. All right, now, if you're not sure, this is a good time to go get a soda pop or something, a drink of water, and let these dry for just a few more minutes. But that's one thing I want to keep you here with. I want everybody to remember what it's like to dry them just for a few more minutes. Because so often people cut and they come back and it's more like 1 second. And then when you're doing it for real, you don't realize how much time it took. And we'll do that sometimes, but right now, I think it's a better idea to let everybody know how much time you wait for painting to dry. All right, now we're going to do this dry brush. Now, if you're not sure, give a little stroke over here on your instruction sheet. That's the only time you're going to use it. See, we're still a little wet there. We need to do that just a couple more. There we go. All right, now watch. Okay, zoom way in on that. We're going to start dragging this across. Now, when I'm dragging it across, if you can push on the skin and you see your skin move a little bit, that's plenty hard. And then as we drag across here, look at here. And we're going to drag it this way. And we're going to drag it this way. Can you see where those details are coming out? Isn't that sharp? Watch this. It's like magic. Look at that. It raises all them details right up and out of there. Okay, now this piece down here, there's some that we can paint on here, but it's still a little bit wet. Okay, so in the meantime, we're going to change up our colors. Now remember, we just dipped that paint right in there, that paintbrush in there. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring it up here against the side. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to dry that right off. Now in my beginner's club, when we build this model, we take several hours building this model, but that's because we only meet for a couple hours. So you got to get everything set up and set out again. For them, it takes about 8 to 10 hours to build this model. It's not going to take us that long. We're going to have this done in just a little while. And okay, I took the lid off and I'm going to stir up again. Now this time I have the silver. Okay, now if you see any big blobs of paint on the end of your brush there, when you're stirring it, you need to keep stirring. There's two basic parts in any paint. You have pigment and you have a carrier or a vehicle. The carrier of the vehicle is the really liquid stuff when you open up a can of paint. That's all that oily or lacquer stuff that's on top. And then underneath that is the thick stuff, and that's the pigment. You want to get them two well mixed. Now we're going to go here with this seat, which unfortunately the seat has fallen off. And we're going to paint it. Oh, wait a minute. Look at that. On them sides. See on them sides? Can you see that? Where we have those two pieces where it's sticking out, where it's rough. Okay, we're going to take one of our emery files, and we're going to give that a little bit of work right there. Because if that's sticking out like that, it might not go together correctly. There we go. Now we also know that when we put this together, I'm going to tell you right now, in case you don't know, that the sides of the seats aren't always seen in that little tiny flight deck. So you're okay to not get paint on the sides if you miss it. And if it does bother you, you want to get some paint on the side, you can always go back and paint them again. But I'm here to tell you, you're not going to see those parts once we put the flight deck together. So now we're going to set that down. Going to let that dry. Guess what we're going to do now? We're going to do that favorite thing. We're going to do that really cool dry brush technique again. Make sure that paint... Oh, there's Sammy back. Hi, Sammy. Sammy likes to visit us when we're modeling. We need to get another napkin here. There we go. Get another napkin out. Dip it in the paint a little bit and then go up against the side of the bottle. And what you're doing, you're loading that paint up. Okay, when you get that paint all loaded up on that brush, we're going to be wasteful here a little bit, but that's why they come in small bottles. See how I'm doing that? Okay, now watch this. We're going to take this piece that's way back here. Remember that instrument panel that we painted black? Oh, goodness sakes, that thing is still shiny as can be, isn't it? Okay. Okay, we don't want to try and dry brush that being that shiny. So, we know that our landing gear quite often is silver, so we'll just take a break here and wait while we're waiting for that to get a little more dry. And we'll come over here and we'll paint these. Now in real life, they're probably going to be gray or white or steel. But you know what? We're doing beginner stuff here, so any silver will work. Or if you have a gray, you can use that too. When I was in the Air Force, landing gear were all gray until about the early 80s. And then they started painting them white because of corrosion. The white paint covered the corrosion better. Okay, there, we got that. Got our tail wheel back here we can do a little work on. Okay, we'll trim that up a little bit. Come over here. See, I'm still using the same 1/4" brush. Just put a little paint on there. It doesn't have to be a lot, just like that. There you go. Perfect. All right, now we're going to set that to the side and we're going to check this again. It's only been a moment. Blow on that. But we need that to be just, can you see where it's sparkly? We need that to be just a little bit more dry. And since we don't want to go back and forth with our colors, what we're going to do is these flight decks, sometimes on the bottom of the flight decks, right here where the feet went, we can do that dry brush thing again. We'll make it look like it's wore out a little bit. But that's about as fancy as we're going to get. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's a little bit of silver on there. Right where the pilot's his heels would have been on the flight deck. There we go. Perfect. There. And if we dry brush across like this, we can get all those high spots. Let's check that again. Okay, I don't know. Can you still see the shininess on there? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we want to be careful of that. So, but our brush is just about ready. Okay, now see what I'm doing here, huh? Getting that brush ready like that. Yep, that's too wet yet. We're going to have to let that sit to the side. So this is one of them times when you start thinking, well, what else can I paint? I've got silver on my brush, and we've got our landing gear painted, so there's really not much. So we're just going to wait for a minute, because this is all part of doing modeling, is waiting for a minute. And when people fast forward through all the work that they're doing, you don't get the feeling for, waiting, and people get in a rush. People get in a rush trying to get something to hurry up and dry. And then they make mistakes, and then they get smears, and then they get mad. Of course, you can always blow on it a little bit. Hair dryers are good things. If you got access to your mom's hair dryer, of course, ask permission first. But a hair dryer will work really good if you get really impatient. And we got silver on here, and I don't want to go back and forth with my silver. Let's see if that'll pick up yet. Okay, we're just gonna wipe some silver on there and see if we can pick up the dials. There are dials on this cockpit. On this dash panel. So I'm not going to show you the perfect way of doing it. If I goof it, you will know too, and you will know what to expect. There we go. I got just a little more paint on my brush. There we go. There, can you see that? All right, so there we go. That's how we dry brush those kinds of things. And that's how we get our flight deck ready to go. Now, let's check our instructions. Remember, always go back to your instruction sheet, see what you're missing. Oh, we are. We're missing two things. I see them already. Look at there. Almost like I planned that. We are missing the control column, and we are missing the emergency gear extension handle. Forgot to paint those. All right. Now, you can get your brush out. Now, we just got done cleaning our toothbrush, our paintbrush. Right? Okay. No need for getting that thing all out again because you just waste a lot of paint. Grab a toothpick and just come out here like this. And it's the bottom part's going to be interior green. There we go. The bottom part is interior green now. And see that? We only use barely one little dab of paint. So, okay, everybody, act like you're busy. Sammy's back supervising. Okay, this was going to be in the next part of the movie, but I might do it now. I was going to show you how to, because that little tip's supposed to be red. But I'll show you how to fix that if you forget how to paint that red on the next one. All right, we're going to put that away. Then we're going to get, and this is all we got to go here. Okay, so now here's our little handle on right here. We're going to paint that black. Right quick. Okay, oops, look right there. We got a broke piece. Okay, we'll handle that in a little while too. And there's our handles. All right, that's all the painting that we need to do in here. Now you notice there's one piece right here. I haven't mentioned that one little piece right there. See that right there? That's the gun sight. I have found out from building this model kit before that that piece is very difficult to put in. So if you ever come across that model part that just won't go in, just leave it out. You're never going to fly anywhere. It's not going to take anybody into battle. No one's going to die if you don't have that piece in there. So instead of being frustrated with something, just leave it out or paint over it. Remember, it's just a piece of plastic and it's just a little paint. It's the enjoyment of assembling it that matters.